Good morning and welcome back to Liverpool Daily News here on the Blood Red channel. I'm joined by Ben Bocsak of Liverpool.com today, and today we're going to start by discussing Jordan Henderson, who is now fit enough to join up with the England squad. Firstly, Ben, how much good news is it to have sort of the skipper back? Obviously, if he's fit to join up with England, then hopefully he'll be fit to start training again and be playing for Liverpool when we face Brighton when we come back after the international break. How much of a boost do you think that's going to give to Liverpool's midfield?
I think it's a huge boost. Obviously, Henderson hasn't been in the greatest of form before his injury, but I still think he's an important player, and I do feel like we've missed some of his ball-winning abilities in the middle of the park on that right-hand side. I think as well, though, it is a bit of a concern that he's joining up with the England squad so soon. I think I read the report about his call-up, and in it, I think he's only had a few training sessions. That's what the report was saying. So it is a concern, like how fit he will be in that England team, and whether it's a bit too soon, because by all accounts, the medical department only expected him to return after the international break. So that one is a bit of a concern for me, and that's something to keep an eye on. I wonder how involved he would be in the team when he does join up with the England squad.
Yeah, I think he was maybe being touted as being able to return for that Chelsea game, which was obviously postponed due to the policing arrangements around the Queen's funeral. But obviously, he's come into the England fold maybe as a result of this injury to Calvin Phillips. He's looking like he could maybe be out of the World Cup now. Just how much he would have played anyway, having barely played a minute for City, would have been interesting to see. But do you see him getting any minutes for England during this international break? Do you think Gareth Southgate's going to risk him, or do you think that might be running the risk of souring what's already a bit of a strained relationship with Jurgen Klopp?
I mean, it's a tough scenario for Southgate, because ideally these games would have been, him trying to test out new players, see if there's anyone that's perhaps worthy of an England call-up into that World Cup squad. But right now, if you look at the Nations League group, I think England have 1 point, and they look very likely to get relegated from a group that they really shouldn't have been relegated from. And does Southgate really want to play in the B League of the Nations League next year? I mean, there's a bit of pride at stake here as well, and I think there's tough games to be played for England. Germany and Italy are both really difficult opponents. So I think it's a bit of a dilemma, because ideally I think he would like to have Henderson in the squad, just to avoid the embarrassment of being relegated from this division. But at the same time, he may also want to test out new players. Like you said, we don't really know how fit Henderson is. I think he will feature, and I think Southgate will use him, because for England, in terms of keeping their pride at stake, it's important to get good results in these games, and to have a bit of momentum heading into the World Cup, because England's last fixture before this international break was against Hungary, and as a Hungarian, I would love to talk about that for the rest of the time, but from England's perspective, the less said about that game, the better.
Yeah, a few of the commenters agreeing with you here. Kumar saying Hendo needs some minutes on the pitch, and Jay agreeing with him. Thinks Henderson's definitely going to play. Klopp's wanting him to get some minutes. But looking at Henderson sort of coming back into the Liverpool fold, obviously there's been a lot of talk about on that right-hand side where Harvey Elliott's been. Obviously, he's offered a lot going forward, but defensively, obviously, a little bit weaker than Henderson. How important do you think it is for Liverpool's midfield that we get sort of that balance back defensive-wise on that right-hand side, especially with, Trent's struggles?
I think it's crucial. I think it's not even necessarily Trent's struggles. I think he's just been very isolated. Salah isn't necessarily renowned for his defensive duties. Elliott has struggled a lot with his defensive sort of capabilities at the moment. He's a talented player, but I think that side of his game he still needs to work on, which is not surprising considering he's been playing as a winger for most of his academic career before Liverpool, and even at Liverpool. It's only in the last year that he's been sort of molded into a central midfielder by Jurgen Klopp. And I think for that reason, I think Liverpool have struggled with the dysfunctional midfield, and I think that's part of the reason why Liverpool's start to the season hasn't been as good as they would have expected. And I think Henderson coming back alongside Thiago as well, that could definitely establish a bit of balance.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. But I'm going to move on now. A commenter here asking, Minamino hasn't played for half season, so why is he considered a flop? So we are going to move on now to discussing Takumi Minamino. He's not been having the best time of it over in Ligue, and it's pretty clear that the grass isn't always greener when you leave Liverpool, because Sadio Mane also been struggling for Bayern Munich. But just the 2 starts in League One for Minamino. Where do you think it's gone wrong for him, Ben?
I think it's a bit too early to say it's gone wrong. I think he's still adjusting to a new team. He scored at the weekend, so I think those calls about calling him a flop may have been a bit premature. Monaco haven't necessarily been the greatest. They suffered defeat at home to Ferencváros in the Europa League, for example, midweek, which was a huge shock. And I watched that game, and they were pretty horrendous. Minamino didn't even get on the pitch. And then he came on at the weekend, and he scored straight away. So that might be a momentum to sort of galvanise his career there. But yeah, I think it's just unfair to call him a flop. I think it's far too early. We're still only in September. And I think he's got plenty of time to prove himself. Obviously, he's got difficult competition there as well. Let's not forget the likes of Ben Yedder to compete with. They're quality players as well.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a bit early to be calling him a flop, isn't it? But do you think there's an argument to be made? Obviously now Darwin Núñez has come back from suspension. The forward line's looking a little bit stronger than it was maybe at one point at the start of the season. Do you still think there might be an argument to say that he should have been looking to stay at Liverpool and Liverpool should have been looking to keep him, given, some of the struggles we've had up top this season so far?
That is a tough one, because I feel like Minamino would have never, that was his best ever season, and he was never going to top that season. So if you're going to sell him on, this summer was the perfect time. But I do agree with you. I do think, considering the fact that it wasn't just Minamino who left, but also Sadio Mane this summer and Origi, who contributed to almost 50 goals last season, and only bringing in Darwin Núñez, I think it is a bit of a miss in Liverpool's depth for sure. I think Taki would have been someone who could have played a few minutes here and there, and he could have added a few goals. But I don't necessarily think he should have stayed at Liverpool for his own personal sake. I think he does need to play regular football. He's 27. And from Liverpool's perspective, it was the perfect time, I think, to sell. But should Liverpool have replaced him potentially with someone younger, maybe, who would have been a similar sort of bargain as Takumi Minamino? That is difficult to find in this age and in this market, but I think that's definitely something Liverpool should explore in the future, because I do think in terms of depth in attack, Liverpool could do with an extra player.
Yeah, he certainly fit that role really well last year, didn't he? Obviously, a few comments here agreeing. Kumar there saying Takumi was a huge player for us last season, and whenever he called up, he delivered. Obviously, he was our top scorer in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, which we were obviously successful in. But another comment here reading, how anyone can concentrate on anything on Monaco is impressive. The place is stunning and full of casinos. So maybe that's been what he's been struggling with. But that is going to be all we've got time for today on the Morning Bulletin. Ben, thanks for joining me. And from everyone here at the Blood Red channel, it's goodbye for now.